Hey there, hi there, ho there. It's me, Bear Gen X GM for the Society of Role-Playing Gamers. With me, of course, is GM Cody, Brian from Gaming with ADHD, and joining us as a panelist tonight is Squirrel Hermit, and Game Masters is supposed to be joining us, but he's having some technical difficulties. But all of us don't count because we got a special guest tonight, and that's this man right here. You might remember him from last year. We had him on. It's Grant from Columbia Games. What's up, Grant?
Hey, hi ho. I'm having a good afternoon.
There we go. Now, you guys are seeing across the bottom of the screen, there's a Kickstarter link going by, but if you refresh the stream, you'll see in the show notes, there's an actual hot link you can click on, and that's for the Republic of Tharda Kickstarter that's live right now and doing real good from what I can see. Wow, wow, wee wow. And you know what? I'll go ahead and throw it here in the chat for those of you who are too lazy to press refresh. Now you got the link. There you go with it. So, Grant, it's been about a year. How you been?
I've had a good year. 2023 on paper was probably the best year for Columbia Games.
Okay.
That Harn World, when we met last, we were promoting Harn World, the 40th anniversary of Harn World, and the hardcover book, which did come out, and it just turned out absolutely over the moon awesome.
Okay.
We're really, really happy with it. I got to get a copy to you, actually. That's
we'll work it out. Don't worry.
It's on the list. It just the hardcover presentation. It just everyone's socks off. And we did it with two maps: a big, beautiful map of Harn and a bonus map of the continent of Lithia.
Nice.
And so it really did honor the concept of a 40th anniversary special edition. And I've almost sold through that whole run. So it was big success on Kickstarter, and then a whole lot of follow-up ever since. It's been we've been on a really pretty good run here with like a renaissance of Harn 40th anniversary and a little before, just kind of leading up to it with these new editions, and people are just loving it. So been a good year.
Excellent. I'm glad to hear that. You guys did a lot of Kickstarters last year. We were just looking up the information earlier today for Game Masters so he could do a little research on you before he came in. See, he hasn't talked about Harn since the 80s, as he put it. So he's like, I got to catch up. I'm like, yeah, here's all the Kickstarters they did. So he was looking at all that. But I was surprised how many you did last year. Impressive. Now, I haven't got much to ask you because Harn, I've told you before, I have high praise of Harn. I think it's a wonderful setting. I think it's a fantastic concept. It's inspired me in a lot of ways. Cody and Brian may have questions for you, but Squirrel here is the Harn fanatic of our social circle. What are you giving me the finger for? Come on, man. You love Harn. You know it.
I'm not a fanatic. I'm an enthusiast. I'm a Harn enthusiast.
Well, fanatic is where the word fan comes from. So.
I know. Yes.
So there we go.
And what would the enthusiast abbreviate to?
I
don't ask for abbreviation. Brian will come up with a bear rant.
Love the setting, love the game.
Squirrel, you have the floor to ask Grant any questions you want to ask him right now or anything you want to discuss, and we'll jump in where we need to. But man, this is your hour. Shine, brother.
Oh boy. I didn't know. I took notes. Rumor has it, Harn, the Misty Isle of Harn, may have been where the Tolkien elves sailed off to. True or false?
I can't officially comment on the rumor. It's definitely it's a rumor. It's a reasonably well-founded one. But if that is so, it's a they keep the secret too, and they're fairly reclusive to this day.
There's a dwarf connection too, from what I hear. Something with the
has a dual.
Yeah, I don't know. Yeah,
oh, something.
Yeah, similar story. I think it's a loose connection. It's designed though, really, as a device to help game masters and players use the world more. To actually use it, right? So. Yep. The elves and dwarves of Harn are familiar. They if you are a reader of Lord of the Rings or any of those, you will understand them kind of implicitly. And we did that on purpose, just so that it's again more accessible and that you can focus then on the storytelling and enriching the experience.
Fair.
Yeah.
So you'd released the core book last year.
Yeah.
And a couple of other things as well, from what I understand. It was a big year, and then now you've got the Republic of Tharda Kickstarter going live. There's 11 days left to go on it. If you use the link, by the way, guys, to back the Kickstarter, he gets to know whether or not it was worth his time to be here. So come on, guys, go back to Kickstarter, make it worth his time. We'll get him back for more stuff later. What is Tharda? Tell me what Tharda is, please.
Tharda is another name for the Thardic Republic. So sometimes Tharda would be like the region, and Thardic Republic is the political entity. It's a section of Harn. It's in the west, and kind of nestled between beside two other kingdoms that are feudal in nature, meaning with kings and earls and all of that. Yeah. That what you're seeing there is a modern version of Tharda, but we're about to launch it with a hardcover, and the hardcover will include two of the cities that are located in Tharda. So anyway, to tell you a little more, Tharda is a place unique to Harn. Its political structure is a republic, quasi-Roman. The history of the area is a little bit like Rome in reverse, where Rome, historical Earth Rome, was a republic for a long time and then devolved into an empire. Tharda did the reverse. Was an empire, was a big, significant empire called the Korani Empire. And lots of history written about this, both high-level history in the Harn supplement, for example. The Harn World talks about that at a high level. And then Tharda, the Republic book, talks about it at a tighter level with more detail, although it's always intended to be nested. So it fits, it holds true to what was said in Harn World. The broad picture is then enhanced and with more detail, but always maintaining the truth. And again, one of the original ideas of Harn was to make a setting that anybody could use with any game system, and that it would be diverse. That would be accessible for many different styles of role playing. So the standard feudal kingdom is an important part of it, but there's an area that's Viking. There's an area that's this republic, and there's a whole bunch of other kind of sub areas that you can sort of choose your favorite style and adopt that. And even if you just played in the area of Tharda, you could probably play for a decade with just what's going on in Tharda and the couple of cities and castles and things that we have detailed there. Actually, quite a lot of stuff has been fleshed out there, but that's kind of true all over Harn. With these 40 years of development, it's pretty well fleshed out. But yeah, it's a republic, which means it has a senate. It also has powerful families that kind of make up that senate, and the concept of the patronage and the that method of running the government. It's of course pretty corrupt, as you might expect.
Like you do.
And there's a ton of opportunities for role playing in that concept. You can have your players be involved in a high level, being senators or related to that. There's an important military side to that, because it's one of the only places in Harn where there's a professional army. And that is an opportunity to be involved in that, role playing in the army or the people that make the decisions for it. Of course, you can also play at a level a little lower down. If you were playing in one of the feudal places, a little lower down is often all the way down to like a manor with a knight and serfs and that type of thing.
Okay.
In Tharda, it's more likely that you might focus on the commerce and trade, and although all that other stuff's still around, there's sort of more of an emphasis on trade and business, and the it's a lively place.
Okay, so question. Let's say I'm someone who's never touched Harn in my life, and I'm going to jump in on this Republic of Tharda Kickstarter. Can I also add on the Harn World book so I can get the top view as well as an add-on?
Yeah, it's right there in the campaign as an add-on. There's also a big bundle with all of the books that we have so far and Harn World included.
Okay.
That's going all in, so to speak. And a lot of people are doing that though because it's a good value.
I suggest yes.
What's that, Squirrel?
I suggest go all in, folks. Go all in.
Yeah.
This stuff is great stuff.
Well, that's kind words. I appreciate that, and it's nice to hear. It warms the heart. But yes, if someone was just jumping in, Tharda and Harn World is certainly enough to keep yourself involved and grounded for quite a while. You'll probably get the collector bug and want some of the other stuff either around Tharda, might be the first place to expand the collection, such as there's 2 cities included in the hardback book, the city of Koranan and the city of Sharan. But there's a number of castles and forts and wilderness sites and other things that are in that area. And a lot of people tend to pick an area. So the moment of the hour here is to pick Tharda. You pick that and then shoehorn your players into that somewhere or another. There's a number of different plot entries that are kind of, some of them are very well described and set up for you. There's also, if you have an imagination at all, then you're going to find the inspirations are just dripping, really, all through it, in every little bit of the writing and the maps and the artwork. And so, yeah, Bear's given us a quick little review of.
I mean, this is great. Like, it tells you straight up front on the Kickstarter what's going on. You get a look of it. And you look at it talks about the hardbacks. We've already had Kaldor, which is the kingdom I would totally play from if I was playing. And some other stuff. We got some others coming up here in the future, Canday and what have you. Mm-hmm. And then we got about Harn World. We got everything's going on, the expanding material, the maps, the atlas. I mean, come on, guys. This is a treat. This is
that little bit right there is one of the neater parts. How it can give you a nice introduction about how things zoom kind of from a top level. The map of Harn, which is not necessarily the top level. There is, in fact, a continent and a planet. But that little grid square, like, you know how atlas maps or maps have letters and number coordinates on the left. So E7 is a square, right? And then we zoom in a little deeper into E7 and we get to a city. And we zoom in a little deeper and then we can see the buildings, and the numbers on the buildings are the key. And then we go right into the building, and that's a Colosseum type building there. And then we're showing you here the interior key, which has kind of the hard details about what you find on this map. And it's really detailed. It's also really beautiful in full color, which is an upgrade. The maps have been around. They've been great maps for 40 years, actually. Mm-hmm.
Yes.
They got a boost with the addition of color not that long ago. And we've been now colorizing all of them, and it's been really a good process.
Full plate armor limited edition. What is this?
Well, that's to tell you that these are hardcover books, because Harn had never been done in hardcover before. It was a box set when it first came out, and then for a long time it was a print-on-demand loose leaf format, which is a good format for collecting and building your collection. But there was always a demand for hardbacks, and then not that long ago, starting in 2021, we figured out how to fill it. So that's what the full plate armor refers to, and you'll see there, to get the book is $49, and it's a beautiful book, full color, 130 or so pages, hardcover. It includes the Republic of Tharda, and then 2 cities. And right below that, we've got the opportunity.
Yeah, this is where I'm like, hey, Cody, you got $339 I can borrow, brother?
No.
That looks like a nice set. That looks like a nice set.
Luxurious.
So, real quick, let me jump in with a request. I've got TN Tori in chat, who essentially has no idea what we're talking about. So, Grant, since there's probably a few other new people, because all of us have kind of grown a little bit since you were here last year. Can you give essentially the elevator pitch for what is Harn?
Yeah, of course. You wrote a pretty decent first sentence there. System agnostic campaign setting. I certainly would use those 4 or 5 words to get started. Been in development since the beginning of time is also a pretty good thing to say. And you've also, the very next statement is any rules. And we sometimes say our setting, your rules, your story. And that's probably point number 3. But the other thing that's kind of special about it is it's been developed for all this time with an internal consistency that really pretty proud of. That started out when I was just a kid. I was 8 years old when Harn came around. And my dad is the initial publisher. Robin Crosby is a guy who in Vancouver who created it and brought it to my dad, who published it and shaped it together with the team into what it is. It's gritty. It's presented as real. We do use the tagline sometimes, a real fantasy world. Some people like that. Some people are less fond of it, but I like it personally. I think it's a decent way to kind of, with a bit of a quip, to understand what we've done. It feels a lot like medieval Europe. The time period in terms of technology, loosely, the year 1200, Norman England, but there's a lot of other little subtleties that were deliberately put in order to make this campaign world versatile for role-playing. They include, for example, a fairly advanced guild system that came a bit later in real Earth history, but has been fit into Harn. So with the guilds, there are all kinds of opportunities for playing and a very robust explanation of how trade and commerce works. It's a lot of fun, even just that. People who are kind of meta gamers, people that, if you've ever built a world or dreamt of building a world, Harn is a marvelous. We've done all that for you, and whether you take it on wholesale or borrow from it, I'm okay. I mean, that's an honor when people adopt parts of Harn and put them into their world. But anyone who's got that kind of a mindset will have a really good time reading about Harn. Because it's presented like a real world.
Yeah.
If you've ever tried to do that yourself, you find out that there's a lot to think about.
Oh, is there ever? Is there ever? Like, so, sorry, just real fast. People give me garbage when, not all, but some people give me garbage when I present my world setting stuff here. And they go, you do too much design. Brother, I am a rank novice compared to Harn. You know what I mean? Yes. Like, I'm like, there's this place and there's some towns. Harn's like, here's a map. Here's all the towns. Here's the people who live in those towns. Here's some of the buildings in those towns. Here's the inside of that. Like, brother, I wish I was this much, man. Come on. Now, Squirrel, as someone who's not Grant, therefore selling a product, but as an appreciator, as you said, of it, what do you say to people who are curious about Harn? What are you going to say?
Well, I'll tell you this, like it's been said before, system agnostic. There are no stats. There's descriptions of NPCs, characters, etc. And the level of detail is just wow. Wow. If you don't want to make anything and you want to maybe have some nooks and crannies to fill in, get some Harn stuff, guys, gals. Just come on. Don't be scared. The water's great. Jump on in.
Brian, you're back. You got audio now?
Yeah, I have audio.
Hi, Brian.
Welcome, Brian.
So Game Masters has finally joined us. We've got two Brians, so I got to call you Game Masters because it's a lot easier than saying gaming with ADHD. So Game Masters, less syllables. Game Masters meet Grant from Columbia Games, meet Game Masters. Of all of us here, this is the man with the big channel. We're all little fish in the pool, and he's much bigger than all of us combined. But he's a good guy, and that's why we hang out with him. But so you did a little bit of a dive on Harn today after I invited you on for this, and I sent you a bunch of links. What did you discover in your adventures? I know you were busy, but what did you figure out?
So I mean, what I remember Harn from back in the late '80s, early '90s, and I had a game store, and that was one of the products that we had, and my memory of it was a little fuzzy. So Bear sent me several links today to kind of give me a 30-year, 40-year catch up. But the biggest appeal that I can find in it is the fact that just what Squirrel said, that it is the fact that it is system agnostic, and you can take really any part of any book and drop it into almost any existing game that you have, regardless of whether you're playing D&D, whether you're playing advanced D&D, whether you're playing Pathfinder. I mean, even some of the stuff that I was looking at, hell, you could even drop some of it down into Mortborg if you wanted to. I mean, and that's when you have a book that is that wide and can take on that big of a scope, or not a book specifically, but when you have a setting that is that big in scope, that's something that honestly, anybody that's chucking dice, they need to have that kind of material in their library.
Well, sure. Like, let's say you're running. Okay, look, let's say you're not running Harn as the setting. You're running Flagstaff, adventure follies, and they go to a town, and you need a stable. Well, you know what? Harn's going to have you covered. You need a Senate building. We just found out Tharda, Harn's going to have you covered. So it's a really great resource, even if you're not wanting to play in Harn, but you're doing fantasy role playing, and you want those things at the tips of your fingers to use with your players. This is the stuff, guys. Like, I know it sounds like I'm doing a hard sell, like I work for this guy or something, but this is the level of impressed you be when you start looking into Harn. Now, Cody, you've said nothing, and I'm not letting you get off the hook tonight. So here you go.
So I knew about Harn back in the day, but I used to buy the stuff just for the maps. Like, this is my only surviving Harn product, which is Cities of Harn. And I still use this to this day, just for the city maps. And, I use my own setting, but I've always bought stuff like this, and Harn always had the best maps and still does. But last time we talked to Grant, I was like, I want to know more about Harn. And so I went into a deep dive on learning more about Harn. And I got to say, I am thoroughly impressed. It's probably the most detailed and rich, and if you could say it, realistic fantasy world I've ever encountered for a role-playing game. And it's probably the most playable, one of the most playable worlds I've encountered with a role-playing game, which is really important because something like, like Forgotten Realms doesn't ever feel very playable to me, right? We've discussed the pitfalls of this in the past, and a lot of other worlds are like that too. They're just not really, some worlds just, it's like, what do you do in this world? But in Harn, there's tons of things to do. That's one selling point I have to say about Harn world. Is everything is set up for adventure. There's politics, and there's trade and diplomacy and assassinations and dying kings and borderlands, and all this stuff set up. Wherever you set a game in Harn, it's already set up for you to have like an excellent adventure. It's just full of hooks and seeds for a game. If you're even remotely have any imagination as a game master, you could carry on a campaign in one place, one kingdom in Harn for a long time. Like, it's absolutely ridiculous. So I think that's one of the biggest selling points for me with Harn is how playable it is. If you want a really playable fantasy setting that's already all laid out for you, you've got it. And again, you don't have to use everything. It is really detailed, but you can just take what you like I always did, and import it right into your own setting, or just use the setting as is and just take little bits and pieces and inject your own stuff, right? So you can do what you will.
These towns, there's elves, there's dwarves, there's monsters, there's orcs, there's everything you could want for your fantasy setting is there. Plus, you get like the maps, the detail, all this crazy level stuff. I'm playing Palladium Fantasy these days. I could run Harn and Palladium Fantasy. Easy. Lickety split. No problem at all. In fact, it's so old school, they probably connect perfectly in weird ways you never even thought of, right?
Yes.
This is what it's about. When people talk about old school gaming, and then all you get is the same story over and over again. It's all about going into a dungeon. It's all about, tracking resource mana. No. Old school gaming back in the day wasn't just that. We never went into dungeons. It was stuff like Harn. It was world building. It was adventuring. It was amazing stuff. Guys, get in. Take the plunge. Try it out. You're gonna be impressed.
Here's the neat thing: Harn, that map. That's just a little island compared to the whole world.
Oh yeah.
That's just a little compared to the whole.
There's all that stuff on the continent. Yeah. Sorry, go ahead, Grant.
That map is available in a PDF on Columbia Games website for free.
Yes. Get it.
And you can go and get it right now. And there's a whole bunch more free samples and material that can allow you to get a really strong sense of whether this might fit your style. And then you still have another 10 or 12 days to get into Tharda's Kickstarter. But also, we've been around for 40 years. We're not going anywhere. There's no dramatic rush here. You got a lot of time to.
Command Post Gaming just hit it right on the head.
I'm stealing it.
Complex. It's comprehensive.
Taking it. Yoink.
There you go. Yeah, that's a great Command Post game. That's a great way to describe Harn. It is just, it'll blow you away. And then when you start getting onto the continent, it starts getting even more interesting. You get that Viking type stuff going on. You got weird sort of French type stuff going on.
I got so hooked. I own every physical copy they have to offer. Literally.
Have you been buying the hardcovers too on the Kickstarters?
Not the Kickstarters. No.
Oh, well, now
I'm a Harn Quest subscriber, so I can't really put any new stuff into the hard copy.
Already got it. Yeah, well, we appreciate that.
The Harn Quest. I like my 3-ring. I just, heck, I've even leathered some of my 3-ring. I don't know. But anyways, I own everything you have to offer on your catalog physically, all of it.
Well, now you got to go get all the hardcover books just to put on the shelf to show off to people when they come over.
I might. Maybe.
So
maybe. Yeah, Brian, go ahead.
One other thing, Grant, that I think or that hasn't been touched on yet, that I do also think makes Harn unique is its timeline.
I was just going to talk about that. That's awesome. Read my mind.
Brian's stealing my favorite talking point. I'm going to have to slap him later, but go ahead.
That timeline is a very special thing. It was conceived way back in the beginning of Harn as a product, that it is a world with a very rich history and a very rich present day. And in Harn parlance, the time is the year 720. I mentioned earlier that kind of an allegorical time period to about the year 1200 in Europe. But in the year 720, there's a whole lot of things that are probably going to happen. Cody started to mention some of that. The king who's on his deathbed, various wars that are about to break out, trade disputes, all kinds of things are kind of on the precipice of happening. But it's your story. So in all the 40 years of publishing this material, we don't ever kick the clock forward. There's no meta plot going forward. There's just this beautifully detailed, rich history, and the closer you get to the present, the more that history becomes very detailed, and it itself is just ripe with ideas and inspirations, and can really sort of keep your game. There's so many ideas, so many different ways you can run with it.
So, Grant, this is the concept of the P Harn, right? The personal harm. Can you talk about that, please?
So P Harn is I'm sure Squirrel's got his own P Harn. He's got what happened in 720 or even 721, and that P meaning personal is he kept the clock moving forward, and things happened. And my point is, Columbia Games doesn't contradict what Squirrel said happened, and we would consider that kind of a dishonor.
Yeah.
So we don't do it.
That's one thing I'm going to jump in and say that's really neat. You guys, Columbia Games, the buck stops here in the year 720. You guys run with it.
Right.
And if you want to, go back in history and piddlywink, whatever, the game's the game. It's your table, it's your stories per se. But yeah, from 720 on, it's yours, Bear. It's yours, Game Masters. It's yours, Cody. It's yours, Brian. It's yours, whoever's on the. Yep.
Right. Yeah, and that's again a design, a goal. Back when this started coming out, it's 1983 when this came to market. There wasn't a lot of available setting type material, and so this was designed to fill a need, and that several important design decisions were made way back then. The timeline is one of them. The kind of internal consistency is another, that all the books would mesh with each other so that the things at one scale will be applicable at the next scale, either up or down. And then also a diverse set of entry points. Like I was kind of mentioning earlier, there's the Thardic Republic, which we're peddling right now on Kickstarter. That's a quasi-Roman location. You can enter into that, but if you want something Viking, there's a section of Harn that's overtaken by Vikings, and there's an opportunity to play in that as the Vikings, or perhaps as the people that the Vikings are overlording over. And we wrote in the history that there was a rebellion up there about 20 years ago, and the next rebellion is tomorrow, if you want it to be, right? But that's just a couple of them. There's also a robust religion and magic are both kind of around. Religion is very pervasive, described in terms of kind of very real, very earth-like, real abbeys and cathedrals and bishops and archbishops, and they have real secular priorities and real world goals and things, and then they're all named, for example, like the Bishop of Caldor, or the Archbishop of Caldor, and who's below him in terms of the hierarchy. These people are all named, and in various supplements there are descriptions of what they're up to, and so that's all there, and you can kind of join into that at so many different levels, right? Being just he's showing us there, that's a sub-infeudation table of the region of Caldor. And it's breaking down how the king of Caldor rules over a few places himself, and below him is an earl. There's a couple of different earls that then hold fealty, hold castles and keeps directly from the king, and then they in turn have some barons underneath them who
all their folks
up the chain, and all of that is there, presented plausibly and realistically, and designed so that you can adopt kind of any part of it, be at any level, and run with it. I mentioned magic really briefly, and so to come back to that, Harn has got a reputation for being magic rare. It's rare is actually the term I kind of like. Some people call it low magic or low fantasy. I don't inherently mind that term, but I prefer magic rare, meaning it's potentially plenty powerful. There are wizards described both in the history and even kind of in the present as powerful, influential, and important, but generally subtle. So subtle is a good word to describe the way they try to operate, because we're kind of remembering from our Earth history what happens when someone is thought to be a wizard or a witch, right? It doesn't end well usually for them. And so in order to have that, where you can have any kind of magic you want with lightning bolts and fireballs and all the things that you might have expected to see from AD&D when we were kids. It's all there. But there's also a beautiful structure that helps you kind of keep it in check, story-wise. One of those things is there's a guild called the Guild of the Arcane Lore, and it polices itself. They are not interested in any being known, even frankly. They prefer to be subtle and kind of mysterious. So if someone gets a little out of hand, as has happened in the history, they're going to get probably met with some colleagues who might say, you better tone it back a little bit or we're going to end you. But I've played in a game where that was the game. We were hunting down a rogue wizard, and we were powerful wizards who could do the kind of most like highest level D&D style wizards that you could imagine. But because there was this agenda, it really added a level of realism and story. And so Game Master, if you're using this stuff, you've got the ability to amp it up or tone it back to your heart's content, even dynamically. You don't have to commit, but it's there so that it's a tool. It's a plausible part of the story, and yet manageable. I see a comment. I'll touch on that. It's magic is not derived from the gods in Harn parlance. The clerics. There is a sort of another part of Harn, which a set of rules that do exist, where clerics are developed as characters and have invocations, which are kind of like spells that they call on a deity to help them, and that looks a little bit like a spell. But the magic that I was talking about before, the guild, technically called the Guild of the Shekvavar, those are elemental. So there's kind of fire, water, earth, metal, the mind, and light, and those are the elements that kind of categorize the magic and help structure it. And it's all really nicely connected and written up, and again, a really nice, plausible way. We did the same thing with monsters. The idea that you can have any monster that you've ever seen in any role-playing setting fit into Harn is there's a plot device that was built into it where from the middle of Harn, there's a mysterious tower where one of the gods is said to live. It's debatable, right? But he's said to live there. And coming forth from this place are the Ivashu. And that's a term for a kind of creature that is created by this god Ilvir. And the Ivashu are anything you want them to be. We've detailed in our bestiary books many different kinds of Ivashu. We've also made it very clear that the opportunity exists to kind of port in any other creature you might want, with the idea being that Ilvir is a creator. The god likes to tinker and create creatures. But then there's some control mechanisms that were deliberately built in way back, such as the Ivashu don't breed. They are sexless, neutered, and they go out in the world and live and perhaps are die either naturally or encountering characters, NPCs, PCs. And then the soul of that Ivashu is quote unquote recycled back to the tower. It's called Araka Kalai, and the then is perhaps crafted into another monster. It's kind of, it's not super tightly stated, but it's designed so that you have both the ability to any monster you want, but also a nice way to control it and keep it in check. And that kind of is a decent way to look at the whole of Harn. Like there's
it gives you that Greek idea that there's one of these monsters, not 30 or 40 of them. So if you fight the Basil Thrust, it's like it's the Basil Thrust. It's that creature, and that's it. Dale says, "What's the easiest entry point to Harn? What would you say are the essential books?"
Well, there's only one essential book to understanding Harn, and that's the Harn World. We have it in a hardback format, which a lot of people like. It's also in PDF. Harn World will give you a beautiful description of this world at a pretty high level, with history, with geography, with culture, politics, and it's kind of enough to get the flavor. But a lot of people will also want to pick one of the other supplements to go with it. That's a more zoomed in, localized, like a kingdom or this republic that is on Kickstarter, because that takes you down a level to individual people. And from the top, Harn World, like a 30,000 foot aerial view of this planet. And the Harn World book that we've got now, the 40th anniversary edition, came out just last year. We've got stuff in there about the continent, the world, even the solar system. It details the plate tectonics of the world. It's crazy how much stuff's in there. But that's all there in case you ever need it, right? It's got ocean currents and winds and tides and the moon and all the things that a real world would have, so that you can tell your story in a more plausible and believable way. A lot of that also was deliberately designed to be quite Earth-like. So Harn is a bit of an allegory for England.
Yes.
And it's positioned off of a great continent called Lithia. In terms of the planet is Earth-like. It's like 3/4 water. It's got 2 polar ice caps. It's got a 24-hour day. It's got a 360-day year. And Harn is positioned geographically where England is, so you can understand inherently what the climate is. Now, those are all deliberate decisions, because we could have made Harn have 2 suns or 3 moons or anything we wanted when we set out to do all this. But it was a design decision with the intent of making the game master have a certain amount of familiarity that would enable the story to unfold without you having to completely suspend your disbelief when you're playing it. A lot of things just kind of make sense, just kind of fit into what you'd expect, right? But then there's so much room for anything wild and fantastical, wizards or monsters or anything, or super mundane serfs and knights. And we've got a book called Manners of Harn. And if you get that book, it has like a character sheet for a manor. And so a manor being like a farm, actually, right? It's a bunch of acres, and those acres are then allocated into different kinds of crops, and you also have livestock. And the Harn Manor book tells you how to manage your manor. It's a little bit like doing your tax return. I mean, it's a super detailed accounting of the manor, but it's rich with story. And you fill this stuff out, and you find out what your budget is, and then you allocate your budget and decide what kind of things to emphasize, and you have this background. Again, it just adds to the richness to have that at your fingertips.
And I'll cut in real quick. If that's if you want it. If you don't want it, it's not going to break it. You can just get some ideas and get something from Harn Manor and run with it. You don't have to get down to that real fine detail accounting minutia. But if you like that, it's already there for you.
I know some accountants, they'd love that. It'd be to find a way to get them to finally role play. Listen, we're going to slay dragons, but at the same time, I need you to manage the farm. What? It's the farm I'm in. Like, there you go.
We have to figure our annual budget. Hey, but if that's your fun, if that's your jam, it's there.
Yeah.
And if it isn't, so be it. There's
And
so much.
The thing is, guys, everybody watching, like, this is something we talked about last time when Grant was here. It is so inspirational that even if you don't use it, it'll inspire your own world. You guys who all watched the live stream we did on Saturday playing in my Albana was because of Harn. I literally had I no, and then I started reading Harn stuff, and it inspired me to do my own little Misty Island with its own crazy stuff going on. And there's some stuff, if you read it, you go, hey, that sounds a lot like Harn. And there's stuff going, that's completely not like Harn. But that's what Harn will do for you. It'll inspire your campaign, even if you don't use it. You'll find something in there that'll make you get creative and get world building on your own. It's a fantastic resource. There we go. Goths in Rome says, wait, this has medieval business management rules? You have my attention.
Wait, you see Pilot's Almanac. Oh.
Yeah, that one's managing ships.
Yeah.
Provisions.
Same type. You got your vessel profile, what you need to do to man it and maintain it. Oh yeah.
There we go. There's the selling point. This game will raise your IQ by 10 points. There you go.
At least 10. Yeah.
That's the start.
Yeah.
All right. Anybody else on the panel got some questions for Grant? Because we only got him for about another 10 minutes. So
I'm having fun. Don't worry. It's not a hard.
I know you're having fun, but you got stuff to do, so I don't want to keep you too late. As much as I love having you on, I want to make sure we get the maximum amount of time out of you. Game Masters, Cody, Brian, any questions? Or you guys just enjoying the show?
I don't have any questions. I've just been enjoying listening to Grant talk about it. But I did want to bring up too that if you want to create your own stuff within Harn, there's room for that too. There's a lot of spots in the Harn, especially on the continent of Lithia that are not detailed, and that's on purpose. I think that's kind of cool too, because you can use Harn, but if you travel to these far off places, the game master can get creative with it and be inspired by what he saw in Harn and you can create your own little thing too in connection with Harn. So I think that's worth mentioning for people as well.
Actually, that's done at a high level, like you mentioned there, around other areas of the continent, but also at a local level. A little earlier, you guys can watch back if you didn't see it. We did a zoom in of the Kickstarter page. So also head over to the Kickstarter page and take a look at that section where we talk about the mapping and how you can zoom in from kingdom, Harn to kingdom to city to interior plans. And you'll notice when we get to the section where a little further down, you'll see one more panel down. You've got some numbers there. Go back up there, Barry, because I want to point out how the red numbers in those buildings are the named locations where perhaps a merchant is running a business or some residents live, but there's a whole lot of empty buildings there. And that's also a beautiful device for you to insert anything that you want. A city like that's a little bit of the section of the city of Sharan, which is located in Tharda. It's called the City of Sins, like Las Vegas, medieval style. It's well known for being a place where you can have anything for a price. And we have explained in this city things like the big structure, the politics, the aldermen or the town councils. But then within something like a guild structure, there would be a certain amount of different kinds of craftsmen. And all that has been thought through according to what the population is and what the needs of the culture would be, so that there is an appropriate number of metalsmiths or millers or litigants or glass workers or any of those things. It's all kind of there, but still plenty of room for you to put in to those empty buildings anything you want, from just a regular resident to something could just teleport in from your imagination. All that, again, was a deliberate decision way back to give game masters an actual way to use this, because that's important, right? It's a good read. You can actually have a lot of fun just reading it. but if you actually want to use it, it's designed that you can.
And you could do anything. Like when I was planning a Harn campaign before I created my own world, I mean, I had plans for a barbarian uprising with a Boudica type queen that was going to sweep across the island. I had a whole thing where through a magic portal, a little book with a cross on it fell through, and suddenly some people were reading this book and getting ideas. You know, you can do anything with this setting that you want to do, because as he said with the P Harn concept, once you start, it's yours. Because 720 is the cutoff date. There will be no more material published beyond 720. So everything you do after that is yours. Like you said, Columbia's not going to come over to your house and slap the dice out of your hand and tell you, no, bad. No, actually, we're doing this. And no.
Are they going to send the Pinkertons, though?
The Pinkertons, yes. The Pinkertons. Yes. Thank you. Game Masters, what do you got?
So, all right. So here's a question I have for you, and understand this is not specific to lore. This is more for the idea itself. Where do you see the future of Harn going? I mean, obviously we know where it's been, but where, like, say 10 years out from now, where do you anticipate it being? And again, I'm not referring to the geography or even in the game itself. I'm referring more to the company, the business.
Sure. Well, 10 years from now will be the 50th anniversary of Harn World, and I expect to be still going strong. I am kind of the second generation of Columbia Games. My dad is still very much involved and with us. I've definitely sort of stepped up to quote unquote take over, and I'm loving that. So I plan to keep it going another 40 years. So 10 years from now will be the 50th anniversary of Harn. I expect that we will by then have achieved one of the goals is to make sure that everything we've ever done is still available. There was a time in the past when it was very difficult to keep things in print. It came into print, and then maybe they sold out, and then it was out of print, maybe for a decade, and then that was a problem. But we sort of broke the back of that problem some time ago, and have the majority of Harn locations and things that have ever been done are still available. And I think that my intent would be to keep that as one of the major goals, is to ensure that that is always true. And then essentially we're filling in the pieces. There's still a whole lot of castles and keeps and things just on the one island of Harn that haven't been very tightly detailed. There will be a paragraph or two about them in Harn World, maybe another paragraph or two about them in Tharda or Kaldor or something like that. But the interior plans and the individual residents and the castle and the village and all of that haven't necessarily been detailed. And so it's really an endless effort. We could certainly do it for the next 10 years, and we might still not be done with everything on Harn. And then if we were wanting to progress beyond that, there is a whole continent. And so I do think we're going to fill some of that in. Another major agenda point is to complete our books of guilds and of religious orders. There's a whole thing about religion. It's very important in Harn. I kind of touched on that a little bit. But one of the ways that is also structured, aside from the higher level thing that you're familiar with clerics and bishops and archbishops, is orders. So in Earth parlance, like Benedictines or those kind of different orders. But there's a whole bunch of them. And they were all explained a long time ago. Maybe like the book Gods of Harn was one of the early publications, came out in the 85, I think. And that defined them way back then. But since then, and even quite recently, we have put out entire books about individual orders. Squirrel will know all about it. He's a HarnQuest subscriber and been
Yes, I was just about to say HarnQuest. Another great thing to subscribe to. What, quarterly? About $30. Well worth it though. You get a great gob of material, color, well written, good paper, and it just fills in. Like I was saying, he said, well, get the hardcover. Yeah, but if I get a Harn quest that throws something into the kingdom of Retham, and I have the hardbound of Retham, how am I going to put it in there if I don't just have the 3 rings, baby?
Yeah. Yeah, some people definitely have made good use of the intent of the 3 rings is the modular and expandable approach.
That's
We
the
also
other
do a lot
thing
of
about it,
we
because
also
you
do a lot of
can.
PDFs these days, and that's modular by definition.
Yep.
Yeah.
So there's a Harn Quest subscription in print or PDF. It's actually just $20 American, and if you're
I do the PDF and print.
if you get them both, it's actually just $5 more. Yeah, and there's shipping if it's anything in print. But it's a very good value, and there's a big perk with being a subscriber because you're considered one of our most valuable MVP kind of people. So we give you half price on the entire back catalog. So if you get into Harn at all, become a subscriber, and then everything you get is half price.
PDFs.
In all the PDFs are half price. Yeah. But yes, back to Brian's question. Filling in the puzzle, completing that is, I think, one of the goals. In 10 years from now, I hope that we have quite a bit more of that done. Another huge project that we've been doing for a couple decades is what we call the Atlas Map series of Harn. And that is a super detailed zoom in of the individual squares on the big map of Harn. And it's got every manor, every village. It's got contour lines showing the hills and elevation. And this map on our master computer file is like 12 feet. It's huge. It's a monstrous map. And it's not all filled in yet because it's so much work. But I hope that by 10 years from now, I'll probably have most of those.
In my mind now, 10 years from now, I see Squirrel Hermit's room looking like Bilbo's room at the beginning of Fellowship of the Ring with just everything, maps and books all stacked over the place, and Squirrel just happily writing away at his desk. I think it'll work out good. As much as I love having you on, Grant, I think I'm having way more fun ultimately just watching Squirrel be a kid in a candy store right now and just seeing how happy he is.
Yeah, it's nice to see it. Warms the heart.
I'm very tickled for this. I appreciate it.
Well, you're a good guy, Squirrel. Everybody in the community loves you. You're a decent human being. So I was glad to have you on because I know how much when someone reminded me, Squirrel loves Harn. Oh, God, reach out to Squirrel right away. Yeah, get him on here. But okay, so Grant.
It's a real pleasure. I'll stick around a little longer here, especially if there's specific questions from the chat or any of you guys on the panel here. And at some point, I'll sign off here. But I'm really happy to continue this a little longer and hear specific points and questions.
Gentlemen, any questions for the gentleman from the bottom row here?
I asked
Brian's gearing up for something. I can see it in his face. He's getting that I'm going to ask a weird question, Brian moment. But Game Masters, you had something while Brian's formulating a sentence.
No, I asked mine. The only other question I would have is are you working on anything top secret?
Well,
yeah, that's what I thought.
Because it's top secret, I don't think I can tip my hand right here live on television. But
exclusive.
I tried, Bear. I tried.
And I appreciate you because that sets me up for doing my Mid-Atlantic radio voice. Unless you got something, Grant.
Well, there's a whole lot of things. Just because you guys, if you're into Harn, you already know what the program is. It's a little predictable in that sense because I'm really not going to throw in a curveball that breaks the canon. It's just not allowed, and so I wouldn't want that. But some of the interesting things, aside from the obvious stuff of completing things, the hardback series is a project. But I recently made a very good friendship with an author by the name of Maxwell Alexander Drake. You might have heard of him. He writes some pretty good books. and he is going to start writing for Harn, and so that's still top secret. No one has been told about that yet, except you guys.
Yay! So I get to do this. You heard it here first, folks. Han going to be working with a writer. New information coming soon. Stay tuned.
Yeah,
Watch
I
more.
will help spread the news, Bear. The squirrel carries the nut far.
There we go.
And that actually is the agenda here is to put together a series of novels that are Harnick, in order to make it work with the fundamental rule that we don't move the plot forward. It is going to be set in the past.
Nice.
It will be like a historical novel.
Nice.
Quality.
The current outline is a story set around the lost dwarven city of Kiraz, which we do have a book about, a source book, a traditional RPG source book about Kiraz, just recently upgraded, colorized, and delivered in the HarnQuest format. And we have two things coming there: an expansion to Kiraz itself with more details about the tunnels and the different things that are unexplored.
Ancient dwarvish city.
Yes. And then this novel, which, well, it's early to tell you whether that really does, when that's coming or how it's going to all be. But we're going back and forth between the writers group and Maxwell, or we call him Drake just for short. And they're doing some awesome brainstorming right now about what they want to do, how to make a detailed narrative that will all serve a few purposes. It's meant to be a good read in its own regard, and it will also enrich your understanding of Harn if you're using it.
I have a question. And this is because Brian stole my good thing earlier that I always love to talk about with Harn. So I'm going to steal the thing that might be in Brian's world, which is any miniatures for Harn, or any ideas about maybe creating miniatures for Harn? Because I know a lot of people love to paint things, and there's a lot of really cool, unique, interesting looks to the Harn world.
Yeah. Yes and no. I went down that road a long time ago. We did a set of miniatures for the Gargan, which are the orcs of Harn, and they're pretty cool actually, because they're Harnick orcs are very unique and very. There's some interesting detail about 5 different subspecies of them. So we did a series of these miniatures, but it was a difficult sell. We sold them to our loyal folks, but what I would really need to make that happen is more of some kind of a relationship with someone else who wants to do that.
Like a third party type thing, right?
Yeah, I think so. A partnership, a license, that kind of thing is, despite what sounds like this really big scope here, Columbia Games is just me and my dad. And we have writers from around the world. There's a team, a dozen or so, but really 3 or 4 or 5 that are really active. Our super editor, Brent Bailey, who is just a genius at taking the various creative works from authors and helping shape them into things that help add to the world of Harn. There are a few authors that are very epic, guys like Kerry Mold and Jonathan Davidson and Mark Renouf and Joe Adams, and I hope I don't dishonor anyone by not mentioning them in that short list. But it's hard to do much more than we're already doing, and the Columbia Games has another bunch of stuff. We got some military war games and
that sci-fi game,
High Colonies. Yeah, we got a train game. We got a hockey game. I got a football game coming out. I don't even know how I do all this stuff. It's pretty amazing.
They do have a lot of board games, a lot of different games.
Yeah. So miniatures, you're certainly not the first to ask, and I would love for it to happen. Part of me was just waiting for the technology to show up with 3D printing and modeling, and that I could could do it on my own. But we haven't quite got there yet. The world isn't quite there yet, to my knowledge.
Well, Grant, I'll tell you this: we know people in
Okay.
this community, and some of the people in this community know some 3D modelers who are really good at making STL files. So I promise nothing, but I'll put some feelers out for you and see what I can scare up.
And that's actually not a bad model for the company to look at, is that for someone to create the file for us, and we would then work with that artist to have that file created and buy it from that artist. And then we would sort of sell that like we do PDFs and let the people produce them.
Cody?
That's like
Cody? Cody's finger went up. If Cody's finger goes up, it's good. What do you got, Cody?
I got two questions. One, I am very familiar with you guys' war games because I love old school war games. Is there any war games set in the Harn world? Because it seems ripe for a war game setting or a set of miniature rules, right?
It does.
Oh, yeah. An excellent segue, actually. There has been a design in our top secret category, Brian.
You heard it here first, folks.
It's a war game of the Caldoric Civil War that might happen. It's in Harn set up to happen, again, with that timeline where we don't go forward. We don't know if there actually will be a Caldoric Civil War, but it's on the precipice of happening because there's a king who's on his deathbed and his heirs are not clear. He's got 3 sons. They're all illegitimate bastards. And each one of them has a claim, but so does certain earls and certain other people, and they all will sort of have something to say when and if the king dies. And that may go down with some kind of a council and a meeting and an appointment or something, or it might break out into outright war. So we did develop a game using loosely the Richard III model, which is a board game we have on the Wars of the Roses. It's waiting for some more attention, to be frank. A really strong contributor, Dave Moreski, is the original guy who headmanned that idea, and it's had some beautiful concepts, borrowing from Richard III and some other elements from Columbia Games' kind of design system, which our war games have a kind of a brand name called the Block Games, because they use wooden blocks for pieces, and those have like 2 really great features, which we call Fog of War, like Stratego. You can't see the other guy's forces, and step reduction when you rotate the block, which is a square, and depending on which orientation of the block is up, it could be a strength 4 or 3 or 2 or 1 as you rotate it. Anyway, we've got a Caldoric Civil War game coming. We had some challenges trying to figure out the scope of it, how many factions to actually include, and how to deal with the idea that they might change allegiances. Richard III is the board game of the Wars of the Roses in England, English history. We have turncoats all the time in that game. And we have another game called Hammer of the Scots where that's an important part. And in order to deal with that in that game, we created 2 versions of just about every important unit or block or personage. So that the Earl of Northumbria, Percy is his name in Richard III. There's a red rose version of him and a white rose version of him, and you switch them physically if the allegiance changes because of something in the game. Well, that sounds fine, right? But in Caldor, there's a bunch of factions. There's at least 4, and really kind of more. And so we got into a little stumbling block there. I didn't even mean that pun. About what were we going to have 4 copies of every Earl so that we could deal with that Earl being on any other side if the allegiances shifted? And we never really solved that, to be frank. At one point, we also tried making all the blocks the same color. like all monochrome, like white or black. But that wasn't very satisfying either. And the bottom line is that we have this idea. We have a design. It's half done, 3/4 done, maybe a little more than that. But we haven't had the time or the energy to get it completed. But it's in the pipeline, and
Good.
it's only going to just take sort of a matter of bearing down, and then 4, 5, 6 months, and it could come true. But yeah, I mean, a lot of it is now I've told people. So if you guys all write messages and send me a lot of emails and say, "Come on, give me this game," it might.
If you need any super secret input, I work for free.
Yeah, we'll welcome you all in as play testers.
This is a labor of love for me. I mean, everyone here knows it. It's just a labor of love. Don't get no better than that.
Yeah. Well, I'm blessed in that sense too, personally, that I get to make a living doing this, but it's also my love, and
it shows.
Well, thank you. I can't help it. It's I'm pretty passionate about it, both because I enjoy it, but I just believe in it, and I'm blessed that I've had that opportunity literally all of my life.
I want to thank Pedar for the super chat, and he says, "Why not use modular standards that you can swap out from the blocks? Basically, have some sort of flag or token ring system, and there you go. Solves your problem. Little
All
extra
right.
product to put in the box,
Or a magnet or something.
or a magnet, something. Yeah,
Yeah. Well, that's pretty inspired. There's also a new opportunity that's kind of arisen from a project to bring the block games to computers.
Mhm.
So that's something that's been a goal forever, and we have done that forever ago. There was a computer edition of the board game Eastfront back in the early '90s, but recently, like just the last couple of years, we have taken a great big step with very modern computer games developed using Unity with animation and proper everything, with a partnership with a beautiful company called Avalon, out of France, actually, and they have developed with me working together with them a couple of our block games, and it seemed like a goal that we would get to, and we'll get there. We're just you gotta bear with me. Is that we can use the flexibility of the computer, because you can just switch the colors of the blocks dynamically on the computer, to pioneer and design the game, and then once we got it working, then we'll sort of figure out how to make it back into the blocks. It's reversed. I've never done it that way, but it's an opportunity that exists, I think, going forward, and it might be one of my solutions. But the standards actually, and the concept of it really might work. It's not the worst idea. A little thing, a flag that you clip onto the block, and
yeah,
tells you which orientation it is.
yeah, pretty straightforward, right?
There's also just merely a facing of the blocks when you play the game. I mentioned the Stratego-like aspect where you can't see what the other opponent has. And a two-player game, it's very straightforward. Two people on opposite sides of the table, and you see only the blank face of their pieces. With 4, it still works. 4 sides of the table works okay. When you get up to more than that, it gets a little chaotic, but it still works. Actually, you just kind of pivot or tip them flat when you're done, so you don't know what your opponent has. That also solves some of the problem, just because if the block or the army changes factions, you just physically turn it around. But that's where the model came, where they were all the same color, because that's what we were going to do. But I think we're going to probably end up with multiple versions of each piece, and we'll just find a way to make that work. We'll tone back the things that are hanging around the edges so that focuses on the essential parts, and then in that case, it should be possible to have multiple different versions of such and such Earl. So,
No, there you go. Obviously, it's a lot of thoughts got to go into the product. I mean, you're producing a product; they're not easy to do. You got to put the time, you got to put the effort, and you got to solve little problems, and that's the way it's going to go. All right, any more questions for the gentleman?
I got one more question if Grant's got time. Harnmaster.
Okay.
Is there going to be an update to Harnmaster, or is that in the works?
Yeah, it is. Harnmaster is on already. It's 3rd edition. It really hasn't changed very much since the 1st edition, which came out in 1986, but was tightened up and streamlined a little bit in the 2nd edition in the early 90s. 3rd edition's 10 years later, almost no real changes because it's been a good system. It's solid. Harnmaster 4, though, is something that we are planning to do, and the success of these hardcover versions of things has led to the conclusion that it will be a hardcover. And we've also figured out we can make great big meaty books like the Harn World book. The last time I was on, we were talking about, and you can see it on the Tharda Kickstarter if you want to read about it. That's 320 pages. It's a big meaty book. So Harnmaster 4 will be Harnmaster, and the parts from religion, magic, manor, and pilots all put together into one nice big tome. We will probably, because we do have a whole book called Harnmaster Religion. See, that book is confusing, though, because it's Harnmaster Religion is the name of the product. A certain, maybe 25-30% of that book is really, truly Harnmaster, is rules and then invocations, which are loosely not the favorite thing to say, but kind of like spells for clerics. But the rest of the book, like 70% of that book, is more like cultural detail about the religions themselves and how they work. And so that part is probably going to be not in Harnmaster. That part will be moved into a book, maybe in the older format. Amazingly, sometimes things come back full circle into a product called Gods of Harn. We did that years and years ago, and maybe we'll do it again. But definitely, one of the mandates for Harnmaster 4 is that it be all encompassing, and so it will include the religion, the magic, a little bit of manor, a little bit of pilots, and then I think there'll be a bestiary. I think we're going to do that. We've got a bestiary as a product. I think we're going to make that into a hardcover book and make those to come out in tandem, probably a separate book still. Basically, Harnmaster 4 on the horizon, probably another year out. There's a team of people specifically who are passionate about that. Pat McDonald is out of Kansas City, is kind of headmanning that. We chatted most recently about that at Gen Con last year, and I'm already gearing up for Gen Con 2024, and that's going to be fun. We're hope to be there with complete series of hardcovers, and I'll kick that can a little further forward when we meet with Pat there. Of course, we talk periodically between, but sometimes a whole months or two worth of work happens in 3 or 4 days of progress at Gen Con, so it's pretty nice. For that. Hey, Goths in Rome has a question about heresies, and yeah, it's there. It's there.
Yep.
It's definitely there. There's all that written into the history, the religious history, and also set up to be part of the present or the future of your own personal Harn. The orders, for example, are not always in agreement with each other on the interpretation or the practice of how to be an adherent of a particular deity. And so there's lots of room for that. Reminded me of something neat. One of the more recent releases was a couple of orders from the religion of Ilvir. I talked about Ilvir a little while ago. I loosely mentioned the concept of the monster factory. It's a very crude term, but it's very useful for understanding that Ilvir essentially runs a monster factory that you can use to create any monsters. Well, the two of the orders were detailed. I bet you Hermit's going to dig them out here, but they were detailed in HarnQuest. And man, this is neat stuff. There's these two orders. Look at this picture. If you see that, they're doing surgery, like an autopsy on an Ivashu. And so this particular article tells a story of this order who have styled themselves like sort of quasi-scientists of the Ivashu. And then layered into that, there is two competing elements where some of them are okay with harvesting these Ivashu and studying them. There's also a layer where they are sometimes captured and used. There's in the Roman part, the Sparta, the republic that we've got now, there are arenas, gladiatorial kind of arenas, and Ivashu are captured and then put on display, and people, slaves or barbarians or gladiators fight them and lose their lives, or vice versa. That book now explains the Ivashu trade as in a business, as in how to go about capturing one of these things, and then who you might sell it to, and then layered into that is a group of people who are actively trying to sabotage that. Maybe think of them like PETA, interested in protecting the Ivashu. And that's so neat, right? There's 2 or 3 layers to this one story. And that's, again, just one order. And there are dozens of them, and 10 religions, and within that, several orders. And so, heresies abound. And disagreements about doctrine or process, totally.
Just got to do a little bit of business. Hang on. Brian, Gaming to HD, I am your boss tonight. I'm telling you to go home. You're from Arizona. You should never be as pale as me. I'm from a cold place. You're from a hot place. Brian, for the love of God, log off. Get some rest, brother. Please. I'm begging you. Okay. Final questions. Let's wrap this up. Any other final things? Anything you want to say? Anything you want to ask? Hermit, any more praise you want to throw his way?
Great stuff. I love it. I spread the word of Harn. Harnallujah. Harnallujah.
I have never heard that. That's a good one. That's a great
I say that actually quite a bit. Zadarok, she laughs. That's my significant lady. Yeah.
Brian, why am I still seeing your face? I told you to go home. You're fired for tonight. Take a sick night. Go home. Get some rest. Look at your face.
Yeah, rest up, Brian.
Come on, man.
I love you, brother.
I love that you showed up, but you need to go.
No, I'm fine. I'm fine. I'm tired.
Did you invite the Sunshine Bear? Oh
man, everyone's getting funny tonight. No monsters were harmed in the making of this game.
There you go. No monsters were harmed in the making of the... By the way, you're saying Monster Factory sounded crude, so I propose to you Monster Foundry or Monster Crucible. There's a name for your bestiary book.
Yeah, those are better words. I don't mind that it's crude in the sense that as a description of what it is, it's good. I never use those words anywhere in Harn, any of the writing. Never does it say that, because it's all period. It's all rich. It's all meant to feel very much like as you would see it. But when I'm explaining Harn to a prospective game master who wants to understand how the design of the product line is such that they can use it, in that case, a Monster Crucible is a beautiful
Yeah, that's
Well, and it
good.
ties
I mean,
into Prydain, which is the Welsh stuff, which you guys have a certain impact of what you've got going on here. So, I mean, it just works. Game Masters, any final thoughts? Any last questions you'd like to ask the man?
No, we're good.
We're
I'm
good.
just enjoying learning what I'm learning.
great stuff, Brian.
I'm happy to have been involved and very grateful to all of you for your time and your questions and your enthusiasm. And just stay with me. I'm going to do this for another generation, and then we'll see if we can make it go beyond that. It should be a timeless thing. Maybe we'll still have this, 100 years from now.
Well, you know what? If I ever have kids, not happening, I'll make sure that they're playing and their grandkids are playing, and they move on from that. And if we do ever get that book up to Canada, I do promise we will show it here on the channel. We will do a nice little in-depth on it and take a look so we can encourage more people to go your way. Guys, the Kickstarter is linked down below in the show notes. You can see the thing going across. Go. Jump in now. $50 for a beautiful hardcover book that will blow your mind. Add on for another $80 the big 300 plus page Harn World book, and you have literally decades of gaming at your fingertips that you can run forever. And if you don't take my word for it, you don't take Grant's word for it, take Squirrel's word for it, or at least
Dude,
just
I'm telling
space
you,
all night
money,
tonight,
it's
man.
so worth it. It's so worth it. It's so worth it.
Yeah, nicely said. It does remind me to make a little plug for something we call lithia.com.
Mm-hmm.
That's a website full of free stuff. So lithia.com is a community website. Every one of the artists and writers that we work with today kind of cut their teeth on writing their own stuff. And
real quick, how do you spell that? Because I just put in Lithia.
Lythia, lithia.com. I'm going to throw the link, guys, in the chat. Hang on. I'm on it. I'm here. I got you. Look at me. Boom.
I was going to say the car place I don't think was appropriate.
No. We thought of it first, I think. I don't know. But lithia.com, it's a beautiful site. It's got, I think, north of 1,500 available articles.
Yep. Well put together.
They're what we call fanon. Fanon is a kind of cute term for unofficial material, but you'll be amazed at how, because the average writer and user of Harn who has ever aspired to create anything and post it very often follows the model.
Well, Coco Shuko Papa Shango says you and your dad are boss players. So I think that's some high praise, because he usually just makes jokes all night long. So to have him talk straight like that, that's high praise, sir.
Yeah,
it's an honor to hear. I'm grateful and humble, and we hope to continue to deliver on that. It's like I said a couple times, it's a real joy that I get to do it. I'm blessed and over the moon happy about it. But it's half of the reason that I have such a good time is that the people have such a good time.
Well, and not only that, not only do you create the stuff, you're also playing it, so that helps too, right? It's not like a certain place in Seattle where no one's allowed to run games in the office anymore, type thing. Just saying.
Absolutely, yeah. We're constantly getting to live on Harn. I would like to say I spend a lot of time there, and it's a wonderful thing. The hearing the stories of other people's P-Harns, for example. Some people have websites where they tell the story of their own P-Harn, and you can go and read all about it. So that the point of that segue from the hard sell, right? Everyone, I of course am interested in you buying my books, and so there's a Kickstarter, and you're welcome, very welcome to come out and join Harn at that level. We do also guarantee everything, money back. If you don't love it, we'll give you your money back. But just before you even get there, right, you got another 10 or 12 days before this particular Kickstarter runs out. You could get a whole lot of great reading material from lithia.com. You could also get the free Harn map and some other free stuff from columbiagames.com. And
I believe Columbia Games has a Harn basic for free.
Well, there is a Harn Master
or Harn Master. I'm sorry, rules. Yep, sorry.
Yeah,
Rules,
fair.
Harn Master. For folks that don't know, Harn Master and Harn World. Yes, they're both Harn, but you don't need either of the other to do any.
Right. They are
Okay.
completely-
I got to wrap this up, guys. We're getting in the weeds, and we're going to send her home because it is going to be my bedtime soon. Cody, what do you got?
Well, I just want to say Harn's awesome. Go check it out. But also, I want to recommend a video that Grant did. It's called Introduction to Harn World Seminar. I will post the link so Bear can share it, because if you want to know more about the Harn World, just to get a general overview, it's a pretty long video, but I think it's worth it. It's pretty, it's a really, really good overview that Grant himself and another gentleman did, and it was really helpful to me. And so maybe it would be helpful to everybody else to get a better sense of what Harn's all about. And if you like what you see there, maybe it'll inspire you to go, buy some of the books.
Well, there you go. Look at that. Link in the chat, guys, just popped up. Go check it out. Grant, listen, let's do this again before another year goes by, please. I know you're a busy man, but it's fun to have you on. It's always inspiring.
I was just waiting for you to invite me.
I sent a couple emails, and they just kind of into the vapors.
I deny it.
Anyway, listen. We're gonna have you back on for sure before too long. Don't worry about that. And when's the next Kickstarter after this one?
Well, we've got just some more of those hardcover books to complete the series. I would say in the spring, maybe April or May, something like that. We'll be ready to do another.
Okay. When it's up, email me and we'll arrange another one of these. No problem at all.
Yeah, I guess that's certainly an appropriate way to time it. I don't need to have something like that running to make this.
But it's fun.
We've always got product for sale and always got ways for people to discover Harn. And so what's most important is that your passion comes through and your audience shows up, right? So,
well, I'll tell you, listen, as a creator, talking to you about this is like, this is me running a show on easy mode, because you have such a passion for what you're doing. It's just like, here's a question. Now let's just let them talk. And we're going to get an amazing amount of passion, an amazing amount of information, and just the depth and the level of the setting comes through, and just watching your mind work as you're trying to explain it to people, and you're touching on things. You're going, oh, that reminds me of this. It's fantastic. It's almost like I can see the math symbols flying around your head, like it's like that meme. But I mean, dude, it's there. It's awesome. It's great.
That's true. That's true. It's a lot of fun. I do talk a little bit.
No, God, no, please trust
more
me.
Than some people do. But,
have you met Brian? Talking. Let me tell you. Was that Brian? What do you want to say? You wanted to say something, Brian?
Well, I was gonna ask. Do you have or are you going to be making any appearances coming up? Like, I know you said Gen Con. Are you going to any other conventions?
Gen Con is kind of the marquee convention for RPG, and so being small and family, I try to just go there. Personal appearances, I don't think I have any more scheduled, but I'm open-minded.
Washington State, sir, is where they're located.
Well, yeah, but we are
originally Vancouver, Canada.
I was born and raised in Vancouver. I only skipped the country when I was about 20.
That bastard.
I'm as close to Canada as you can be. I'm about a kilometer from Canada right now, where I'm sitting. That's like half a mile for Americans, and it's. We're as close as we can be without being, and that was a business thing, like 1993. Trying to run a business in Canada was hard, especially.
You think?
Blaine, exactly.
Yeah.
And as the mail order kind of grew and became even more important, it became even more important to be on this side of the border. So my heart is still in Canada, but I'm here, and but it's right there. And so
at least you didn't say you were in Point Roberts. That would have been too funny, because that's like just the ultimate irony for Americans that have to live.
It's kind of close. It's like Blaine is at least on I-5, and we have. You can get here, Point Roberts. Oh man, that's bad.
For those Americans who don't know, Point Roberts is a piece of the continent that's
Yep.
just below the American border, but it's separated physically from America. So kids that go to school, because there's no school in Point Roberts, have to go through the Canadian border, back into the American border, go to school, and then when they go home, Canadian border, back into the U.S. border. It's this horseshoe mentality. And during
Twice a day, every day, and there's no airport of any
Nothing.
consequence or boats or anything. So it's really
pretty brutal. Anyway, I do want to go to bed eventually, and we have an after show to get to because that's what we do is we hang out and we talk before we go to bed. So I want to thank Grant for being here. Thank you so much again. It's always a pleasure having you on, and your passion it's infectious. Squirrel Hermit, hope this was everything you hoped it would be and more. So glad to have you on for this one, brother. Brian, Liquids, brother, and tell Kim to take better care of you and hit you with a pot and pan if you decide to turn on your camera tomorrow. Cody, always a slice, brother.
Nice.
And Game Masters, man, I'm so glad you made it. We lost you at the beginning, but now you're back and things are good. And for everybody who showed up in all the chats all across, thank you so much for being here. Thank you for the questions. Thank you for the humor. Thank you for everything you did. I am, of course, Barrett, the Gen X GM, and for the Society of Role-Playing Gamers, I say peace, love, geek, and Harn. Make one for yourself. You'll be happy you did.
Nice.
Do it.
And Brian.